This is He Who Moans, Doctor Who reviews. I only complain because I like Doctor Who, and I care. And I overanalyze too much because, whatever, it's just my opinion. Oh my god, yes! Jamie Matheson's back! Our new saviour who delivered 2 awesome episodes last year has returned to bring joy and life and whimsy and colour to the show and lead us on our way down the yellow brick road into the happy, sunshiny land of paradise and wonder. Rejoice, everybody! Everything's going to be alright! Christ, this is not going to be fun. Okay, given it's credited to Matheson and Moffat, I'm unsure who to praise for the positive things I have to say about Girl Who Died, and who to blame for what bugged me. Since last year on episodes where Moffat had a co-writing credit, the bits that were clearly his were rigidly separated from the bulk of the runtime, and felt kind of weird and out of joint with the rest of the episode, and were, for all intents and purposes, just these really insubstantial little romance vignettes that really wouldn't have looked that out of place in a copy of The People's Friend. Here, though, the episode told its own story from start to finish. Mostly. I'm going to assume that Moffat didn't bother co-writing this just to add that cold opener, and it isn't made totally fucking obvious whose bits of it are whose, but given what I know of Matheson and Moffat's recent works, I'm going to make some assumptions. I assume that Matheson is primarily responsible for a large bulk of the dialogue between Clara and the Doctor, which is my favourite thing about the episode. I just felt that their back and forth was really punchy and warm and had a lot of rhythm to it, which reminded me more of the way they were in Mummy and Flatline than most of Moffat's recent ones, where Clara was just sort of there. Jamie writes dialogue like these are actual real people, almost like the Doctor and Clara are mates of his, which is the best way to write dialogue as it feels more natural and will warm your audience to the characters. Whereas Moffat writes dialogue clearly with the purpose of hoping that you'll be impressed with his poetry.
To save my life, I tell you that leaving this place would be death itself.
Bits like this I'm gonna guess was Moffat. I may be wrong, of course, but they do have all of his recent works' watermarks.
I know I'm strange. Everyone knows I'm strange.
Hey everyone, here's a great idea. Let's just have the dialogue out and out say, wow, isn't Maisie Williams' character so important and special? Believe it, because the dialogue said she was. This is what I call the river song rule of writing, where specific lines of dialogue emphasise the character's importance much more than the events of the narrative do. And it's just really patronising. We're not going to fall in love with your characters just because you tell us to. Okay, given I bitch about Moffat far too much, I'll leave him alone for a bit, because as said, I don't know the extent of his involvement in this one. Those lines could have been Jamie's. I doubt it, but they could have been. In fact, I'm actually doubting if Ashilda was originally going to be part of this story at all. She kind of feels like she started life as a background character, and then Moffat overwrote the importance of her into it when they brought Maisie Williams on board, as she's a relatively big name that they could blast out on social media to use for audience pull. Again, I don't know for certain, and maybe I'm just being cynical, but the Ashilda angle of the episode certainly feels like an addition that was made a lot later in the writing process. Anyway, I found Girl Who Died was incredibly similar to Robot of Sherwood from last year. It's a silly sci-fi history mashup employing many of the same elements, and you may remember that I did actually like Robot of Sherwood, so you might have been expecting praise from me, and so did I at first. Going in, I thought to myself, okay, historical setting plus alien invasion, fine, you're contrasting history with wacky aliens because comedy and shit. While nothing particularly new, again, it could work. But I just felt the story was hampered by trying far too hard to tie what appeared to me to have started life as an entirely separate story with the next episode. Because the entire thing felt like it just didn't really have a whole lot of substance to it. And I felt the episode's heightened interest in the Maisie Williams angle was the problem. Because from the introduction of the Maya, we then embark on a very simplistic and highly cliched underdog story that was just full to bursting with all of these entirely unnecessary scenes, and it just felt to me like as he was writing it, Jamie was just sort of metaphorically looking over his shoulder, wondering if Moffat was going to add more stuff to it later. So he kept filling it with more of these scenes as everyone prepares to fight the Maya that just felt like they were just crying out to be cut in a second draft. I was fully expecting them to break into a montage set to Joe Esposito at any minute as everyone trained. Hell, they should have done that. It would have meant this overlong portion in the middle of the episode would have taken up about 5 minutes. It just felt like we were just killing time until the grand finale. I mean, I guess this was kind of different to how this type of scenario would usually play out, because I spent a while wondering whether the Doctor might be about to come up with some kind of technical, intellectual way of defeating the Maya at any minute. But the thing is, since he did come up with a technical way of defeating them in the end, the middle 20 minutes of this episode just felt even more pointless to me. Actually, I felt the thing as a whole was a bit directionless. The Maya basically spend a lot of time up in their spaceship while everyone prepares to fight them, and then the Doctor and co come up with some big scheme to make them look a bit stupid. That's pretty much it, isn't it? It's just one big pissing contest between some wacky Viking alien and his robots and some random medieval villager type people with yet another oh my god amazing character thrown in the middle. Like, this is the kind of plot that you could hang on a music video. The Doctor and Clara show up in this village that's being invaded, they have to train to fight the aliens, everyone breaks out into a rendition of You're the Best Around, and then they defeat them at the end of the video. When you can fold your entire thing into a 6-minute music video and you'd get pretty much the same experience, that's not a good thing. Okay, I will give it this though. Initially I felt there might have been something interesting going on here when we first see that the aliens are masquerading as Norse gods. We could have gone in so much deeper here. What we could have done here is examine ordinary people's connections with their spiritual beliefs by having some aliens coming along and actually manifesting as their deities. Think about that. Medieval villagers actually coming into contact with what they believe are their gods. There's a ton of things you can do there. It could have been a really witty and introspective sci-fi reworking of man's spiritual beliefs. But then it just sort of does a Space Viking Karate Kid movie, and I was just like, okay, fine, I guess. Again, maybe I'm just not the target audience for this show anymore, but I'm just clamouring for New Who to start showing some more maturity and depth. I thought maturity and depth was what the Capaldi era was supposed to be all about. Is there any real reason why we can't do that? And I think that is what we should be doing by the show's 9th season, because loads of us have been watching New Who since it started, and it's just starting to feel like the show's not really trying to hold the people like me who've been watching the whole thing anymore. Which is weird, because given all of these obtuse references that it's been piling on of late, which are seemingly there to appeal to people like me who are knee-deep into Doctor Who, I'm kind of unsure what they're expecting me to make of stuff like Girl Who Died, other than a bemused sense of, it's like pretty much any other Doctor Who story, I guess. That's the thing, the show needs to decide who it's primarily catering towards now, because it seems to just be cobbling together older ideas on a yearly basis out of a hope that newcomers will be impressed with said ideas, unaware of them having been done to death. Which, fine, maybe stuff like Girl Who Died works for newer people, but the thing is, what's the ultimate point in just going in circles constantly dealing with the same 8 or 9 ideas in the same ways year in, year out? What new things did Girl Who Died bring to the table? 'Cause I can't think of anything that sets it apart from most recent episodes of New Who. It was just going, look, we made another one. And stay watching next week, we got another one for you. If the show started building on what it's been working with and started grasping at maturity, I think more people would appreciate it. And I do want that to happen. I want the show to start growing. I want it to win awards again. I want the show to get the respect I think it deserves. And it could be doing that. The ideas are in there. That's why I keep pointing them out. There are all these opportunities dropped in there for the show to start showing maturity. There's this concept about aliens taking the form of deities. There was the kid Davros from Magician's Apprentice that I talked about my idea for. There was the Nethersphere from last year's finale. There's all this creative energy just burning in there, just crying out to be explored in a more mature way, but the show's just not doing it for some reason. We're still just siphoning through leftovers of seasons past. Anyway, then we come to the end of the episode, which... Oh, Christ, the end of this episode. Okay, I've seen the last 10 minutes get praise from some people for some reason, but to me, the ending of this one was one of the most utterly ham-fisted things that I've seen New Who do. So, Maisie Williams' character dies, and the Doctor realises that he wants to save her, and conveniently enough, a device from this week's monster can be easily modified by the Doctor to bring the fucking dead back to life and grant them immortality. Okay, as I said, Maisie Williams feels like she came along a lot later in the development of this script, and this entire device to extend the life of Maisie Williams' character makes me almost certain of this being slapped onto the girl who died at last minute, because if it was always the intention to have Maisie Williams in it and to have her be given immortality this cheaply, I'd be very surprised because it felt incredibly half-arsed to me. Unless this extreme plot convenience is going to turn out to have been planted by, say, Missy or something, or they're going to explain it away with something else later in the series, I was just waiting for Clara to say something along the lines of, "Wow, Doctor, it was so lucky that you knew that this week's monster carried a device that you could modify to bring dead children back to life so that people won't complain to Ofcom about the show killing a child, and that said device would make her live forever so that we have a plot to hang the next episode on and a reason to use our big-name actress again." Yes, I know, Clara. Who'd have thought the void between life and death could be conveniently bridged so easily in just 5 minutes? Like... seriously, this is finding the fucking holy grail in a bargain bin at Poundland levels of cheap. This resurrection and immortality thing was far too easy. Like, I know that people are going to cry suspend your disbelief at that, but suspension of disbelief only goes so far, you know. Overall, while it wasn't a total train wreck, it wasn't exactly all that impressive and was kinda disheartening. I'm unsure how many of my issues with this episode are down to behind the scenes scripting problems, because it feels like they had a lot of them. But in the end, it did have potential and it did have good ideas that it just didn't act on for some reason.